Look who showed up in silence, and somehow crashed the city's nervous system with a fucking outfit. You didn't say a word, didn't raise your voice, didn't post a thing, and yet the streets are trembling like a prophecy just walked by in leather and war paint. Let's be clear. This wasn't just a look. It was a disruption, an atmospheric override, a visual middle finger to everything they believed you weren't supposed to become. You weren't dressed. You were encoded, every thread, a trigger, every color, a contradiction, every step, a glitch in their inherited programming. And now they're spiraling, not because of what you wore, but because of what it exposed. See, they weren't afraid of your style. They were afraid of the mirror it held up, because the moment you stepped out, they saw the version of themselves they abandoned, the one that used to dream, the one that didn't need permission to be unapologetically real. But you wore the war. You wore every silent breakdown they never noticed. You wore the residue of every betrayal you didn't scream about. You wore the scar that healed into art. And you made it look like it was designed that way. Oh, they're panicking now, aren't they? Calling it a phase, saying you changed, acting like they're concerned for you, when really, they're just concerned about what your presence is doing to their fragile facade. Because let's face it, you didn't just dress like power. You became it. You manifested the forbidden. You unlocked aesthetic divinity. And now their beige little world is melting. You walked into the room, and suddenly, everyone remembered what it felt like to feel alive and unhinged at the same time. You reminded them that rebellion could be beautiful, that danger could be divine, that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is terrify people with the truth of your aura. And that's what you did. You didn't wear clothes. You wore a psychological weapon. You didn't match colors. You matched frequencies. You didn't accessorize. You spoke in symbols. And somewhere between your silhouette and their surveillance, they started filing reports in their heads, trying to figure out how the hell you turned pain into presence, and presence into a F-sicking, arrest-worthy experience. They looked at you and felt insecure, obsessed, hypnotized, jealous and powerless, all at once. That's why they're whispering. That's why they're replaying the footage. That's why their group chats are on fire. Not because they disapprove, but because they know they can't imitate it. Because what you wore, that wasn't fashion. That was forensics, a visual testimony, a coded confession that you've been somewhere they couldn't survive and came back with taste. Your outfit said, "I'm what happens when survival becomes style. I'm what vengeance would look like if it had a fucking tailor. I'm what happens when evolution stops asking for approval." You didn't dress to impress. You dressed to provoke, to disturb, to resurrect a part of yourself they hoped stayed dead. They thought you'd keep hiding, keep blending in, keep dressing down your trauma and dimming your intelligence to make the herd feel safe. But you showed up like a glitch in their bloodline. You looked like an unwritten law with a vendetta. You looked like retribution in high definition. And now, they don't even know how to look at you. Because you're not just seen, you're experienced. And their eyes weren't built for this frequency. You weren't supposed to look like the truth they buried. But now you do. So let them panic. Let them mislabel. Let them spin their narratives, because they can't unsee it, they can't out-talk it, and they sure as hell can't undo it. You already made history, and you did it without ever needing to say a word. You didn't just wear the look, you became the warning. You think it was about clothes? Nah, it was a declaration of war. You see, most people dress to hide, to conform, to fade into the grayscale of compliance and quiet desperation. But you dressed like the revolt, like the secret they couldn't kill, like the prophecy their ancestors tried to erase from the bloodline. You weren't putting on a look. You were putting on a legacy, a signal flare, a code they thought was lost in the archives of rebellion. You didn't pick your outfit, it picked you. Because only someone who walked through fire and didn't just survive, but memorized the flame pattern, could pull that shot off without flinching. You walked out the house like vengeance had a dress code, like revenge got tailored, like the truth learned to walk upright and make direct eye contact. And now, the city can't breathe. Because one glance at you was enough to unravel months of lies they told themselves. About what power looks like. About what survival sounds like. About what they could have been if they didn't sell their souls for likes, handshakes, and fake peace. They weren't ready for someone that looked like the glitch and the upgrade at the same time. They weren't ready to see fashion turned into a forensic weapon. They weren't ready for an energy so bold it made their personalities feel like blank receipts. They weren't ready to be exposed by contrast. Because you didn't just stand out. You revealed the emptiness in their uniformity. You reminded them that their chains were self-welded, that blending in was never a flex, that freedom doesn't apologize. It just shows up and makes every eye feel like it's been sleeping with the enemy. That's what you did. You walked like your past owed you silence. You glared like your pain had learned choreography. You moved like fashion was your fallback, and your soul was doing the real talking. And they felt it. They felt the judgment in your stillness. They felt the prophecy in your step. They felt the silence in your presence, louder than their entire personality. And now the alarms are ringing. Security's watching the tapes. Managers are whispering behind locked doors. Old friends are digging through your past, trying to find some way to downgrade the glow. But you're just walking, just being, just existing louder than their entire existence combined, because they never knew how dangerous it could be for someone to stop needing validation and start dressing like they've already won. That's what shattered the illusion. You didn't dress for compliments. You dressed for closure. You dressed for the version of you that cried alone and had no one to call. You dressed for the chapters they skipped over. You dressed for the funeral of the old you, and that's why they're panicking, because they don't know if this new version of you is here to forgive or to collect. They're watching every move now, tracking your frequency like you're a walking signal from the future, and they're terrified of what that future might mean for them. Because when you walk in, their control walks out. Their cool disappears. Their confidence shatters. Their sense of superiority melts like paper in a storm, all because you chose not to blend in, not to shrink, not to censor your evolution. You became the audacity they never had, the aesthetic their soul rejected out of fear, the glitch that became a god-tier upgrade. You didn't just break their expectations. You obliterated them, and now you're the story, the whisper, the siren, the one they talk about in shadows, but can't confront in daylight. You didn't show up to compete. You showed up to end the fucking simulation. And that look, that wasn't style. That was your arrival notice. They asked, what the fuck did you wear? But what they meant was, what the fuck did we awaken? And now they know. You're what happens when fashion meets fate, and fate stops asking permission. They tried to laugh, tried to dismiss it as extra, tried to say you were doing too much, as if intensity was a crime, as if commanding attention was arrogance, as if looking like you survived hell with a tailor was too much truth for one room to handle. But here's the paradox they can't process. You're not overdressed. They're under-evolved, because that outfit, that wasn't about fabric. It was a frequency, a disturbance, a pulse from the other side of every betrayal, every blackout, every broken promise you turned into armor. You walked in, and the room stopped moving. Not because of noise, but because you were dressed like the final scene of a prophecy. They weren't seeing you. They were witnessing a rupture in the code. You didn't just challenge the dress code. You rewrote the social algorithm. Suddenly everyone's asking questions they never had the courage to ask themselves. Why do I dress like I owe the world an apology? When did survival start looking so cinematic? Why does their look make me feel like I disappeared years ago? Because you weren't wearing clothes. You were wearing consequence. The consequence of being underestimated. The consequence of healing without applause. The consequence of outgrowing every cage they built around your identity. And it's not just your look that broke them. It's the fact that you wore it with calm. Like chaos was your perfume. Like tragedy was your stylist. Like drama walked behind you, but peace whispered in your ear. That's what made it unbearable for them. Because if you had screamed for attention, they could have ignored you. If you had begged for approval, they could have laughed. If you had played their game, they could have pretended to win. But you didn't play. You arrived, fully formed, unapologetically dangerous, unforgivably real, and beautifully untouchable. Your look wasn't fashion. It was evidence. Evidence that evolution isn't loud. It's fatal. Fatal to delusion, fatal to conformity, fatal to every lie they told themselves to feel safe around mediocrity. And now they're checking the mirror twice. Now they're buying clothes they don't understand. Now they're copying what you did without knowing where it came from. But they can't replicate origin. They can't clone depth. They can't screenshot a soul that paid for its glow with isolation and rage. They're trapped in costumes. You're in ritual, draped in memory, armored in pain, laced in layers of coded madness they will never decode. And the best part? You didn't do it for them. You did it for the version of you that sat on the floor shaking, breathing through trauma with no one clapping and no one watching. You did it for that version. So when you passed the mirror, you both nodded. And now, the city's on fire. Security footage is being studied like scripture. Old enemies are suddenly silent. Strangers are asking, who the FCK is that? And allies, they're either leveling up or quietly disappearing. Because not everyone survives being close to power. And that's what you are now. Power in form. Truth in motion. Beauty with a kill switch. You turned your look into a map back to yourself. And anyone who sees it feels two things instantly. 1, jealousy. 2, 3, judgment from a mirror that finally told the truth. 4, so let them stare. Let them glitch. Let them whisper, what the fuck did they wear? Because what you wore was freedom. And freedom is always louder than fashion, more terrifying than rebellion, and more beautiful than they were ever ready to see. You weren't dressed to be seen. You were dressed to be remembered. And now, they'll never unsee you. You didn't just walk through the room, you rewired it. Every molecule shifted, every fake smile cracked. Every unspoken insecurity rushed to the surface like it was gasping for air. Because you looked like a memory they tried to suppress. But it came back in 4K, walking on rhythm, soaked in vengeance, and dressed like it never needed their apology to begin with. You walked in like justice got fitted, like retribution got styled, like prophecy got its hair done and was ready for a photo shoot in the middle of enemy territory. And the silence? That wasn't awkward, it was reverence. Because even their hate had to pause and admire what resilience looked like when it stopped flinching. They whispered, "Who let them out like that?" But what they really meant was, "Who let the ghost of every time we doubted them come back looking like a fucking icon?" They weren't afraid of your look. They were afraid of what it said. I forgave myself first. I don't dress for the system. I dress like I survived it. I'm not trying to belong anymore. I'm trying to haunt what hurt me. And that's why they panicked. Because you weren't just wearing a vibe. You were wearing a timeline they can't escape. You were the sequel they never wanted filmed. The unfinished business wrapped in silk and slow-motion lighting. The consequence that showed up to the party dressed better than the cause. And you didn't blink. You didn't smirk. You didn't flinch. You didn't perform. Because when you're becoming, you don't need attention. Attention becomes inevitable. They weren't ready for you to embody your aftermath. They thought you'd stay stuck in survival mode. They assumed you'd tone it down, play it safe, blend in for comfort. But you walked in like a coded threat, and the algorithm had no firewall for that. You were glitching their egos in real time, rearranging power structures just by standing still. And somewhere between your boots hitting the floor and their throat going dry, they realized you weren't just different. You were dangerous, because you had nothing left to prove, and everything left to become. You wore the version of yourself that they mocked, ignored, underestimated, and gossiped about, and turned it into aesthetic warfare. And now they scroll your page in silence. Now they show your photos to their friends with that awkward laugh. Now they stare longer than they want to, because no matter how many filters they use, they can't download your presence. You became unfollowable. Not because they don't try, but because you operate at a frequency their soul unsubscribed from a long time ago, when they chose comfort over calling. And your look? That wasn't for applause. It was for alignment, for that part of you that said, no more shrinking, no more dimming, no more dressing like I owe the world an explanation for surviving it. So yeah, WTF did you wear? You wore the future. You wore the betrayal. You wore the silence. You wore the nights no one knew about. You wore every fucking version of you that got back up and said, not like this. And when they asked, what statement are they trying to make? They missed the truth entirely. You weren't making a statement. You were making a threat. One stitched in elegance, revenge, silence, and glow. And now they lock the door when you walk past. Now they cross the street. Now they stop breathing for half a second when they see your silhouette. Because deep down, they know. That wasn't fashion. That was a fucking warning. And this time, it came dressed like the final boss. And the most twisted part? You didn't even try. You didn't rent a stylist. You didn't beg for attention. You didn't post for approval. You didn't walk in hoping they'd notice. You walked in because you existed, and existing at your level was already too loud for a world built on fear and fakeness. You didn't just put on clothes. You triggered surveillance, not from cameras, but from souls, from eyes that don't blink when you enter, from mouths that suddenly can't form words without your name in them, from systems that flash red internally, because you didn't just change the energy of the room. You reprogrammed its entire fucking architecture. You weren't supposed to look like that. Not after what you've been through. Not after who tried to break you. Not after how many times they bet against your pulse ever stabilizing again. You were supposed to fade, supposed to tone it down, supposed to play background noise to their main character syndrome. But you didn't. You walked in like survival, graduated to throne building. You walked in like pain, dressed you personally, like scars gave you their full endorsement, like every insult they whispered behind your back got turned into stitching. And what really fucked them up? You looked good, too good, not polished like plastic, but glowing like the Holy Ghost got bored and made a monster in heels, leather, or silence. You made them question what the hell they've been doing with their lives, why they never look that alive, why they never feel that untouchable. Because deep down, they know the answer. You earned it. And they haven't earned a damn thing but opinions. Your presence was work, your energy was surgery, and your look was the final draft of a soul that rewrote its own fucking origin story. You didn't just evolve, you weaponized evolution, and now they panic scroll your stories. They save your photos in private folders. They group chat with concern, wondering how you keep getting more terrifying to ignore. Because that's what they feel now. Not envy, not curiosity, terror. Terror that you might show up again. Terror that you're not done evolving. Terror that your next look will say even less. But speak even louder. Terror that your silence has become a surveillance tool. That your glow has become a fucking warning label. That your presence has become the post-credit scene in a horror film where they realize you're not just back, you're the sequel, and this time. So when they ask again, what the fuck did you wear? Tell them the truth. Everything you were too scared to become. They called it a look because that's all their eyes could handle. But what you wore wasn't a look. It was a revelation, a timeline collapse, a coded warning, a resurrection broadcasted through fabric and posture, tailored in rage, hemmed in silence, and soaked in try me. You weren't matching colors. You were matching vibrations with a reality they're not allowed to enter. Your outfit? That was the uniform of someone who died in public and came back with no leash, no master, no explanation, and no fucking chill. You didn't just disrupt the room, you rearranged hierarchy. You walked in like the echo of a prophecy that someone's grandmother prayed never woke up. And now they flinch when they see your silhouette. Now they straighten up like court is in session. Now they ask questions they ain't ready for the answers to. Is this real? How did they survive that? Are we in danger? Yes, you are. Because this isn't style, this is strategy. This is you dressing like the end of an era and the birth of a weapon. This is what it looks like when someone stops waiting to be accepted and starts dressing like a fucking virus in their comfort system. You didn't just glow up. You became a glitch in their simulation, a walking contradiction, angelic posture with demonic precision, holy silence with predatory calm. They don't know if you came to bless them or bury them, and honestly, neither do you. Because when your look carries the weight of unshed revenge, every move becomes sacred. Every blink becomes surveillance footage. Every step becomes court evidence. So let them talk. Let them guess. Let them choke on curiosity they can't digest. Because the final answer is this: you wore what pain built. You wore what healing designed in the shadows. You wore what the curse tried to bury and failed. And when you walked out that door, you weren't asking for compliments. You were confirming their worst fears, that you're back, that you remember everything, that you're not hiding anymore, and most of all, that this time you're not dressing for survival, you're dressing for impact. And now, the whole city's on alert.